Recently, we lost Ernest Ernie Gygax, son of Gary, son of Ernst. Ernie was one of the original playtesters of D&D and the inspiration for the character of Tensor, who you may recognize from his floating disc spell, among others. Tensor was the first mage in D&D. This video is about the strange happenings that resulted in more than 2 different new companies named TSR and how their violent delights led to violent ends, and how Ernie was tied into all that. You can find links to my sources in the description. I know he was a controversial figure to many, and this video is meant neither to defend him nor besmirch his name. There will be no besmirching. But I am going to mention the things he said in his later years and talk about why everyone got so mad at him. More on that in a few minutes. First, here's a fun fact. Did you know that Ernie came up with the concept of multi-attack for fighters? Before we jump into Ernie's life, let's have a word from our sponsor. Wait, don't skip past this, it's for charity. You wouldn't skip a charity ad read, would you? Anyway, for the first time ever, D&D fans can get an ebook bundle of 26 best-selling Dragonlance novels worth over $200, including the Dragonlance Chronicles. Did you hear that? 26 rich fantasy D&D novels for a suggested price of $18. Although it's humble bundle so you can set your own price. Remember, it's for charity. Catch up with Brave Tanis, Fiery Flint, or that rascally Raceland. Get this bundle from March 15th to April 5th only, and proceeds will be shared with Room to Read, a nonprofit dedicated to providing quality education to kids in need. Good books and a good cause, it's a no-brainer. Link in the pinned comment below. Thanks for your patience, now back to our video. If you haven't listened to the podcast When We Were Wizards, I highly recommend it. It's a fantastic look at the trials and tribulations of early D&D and TSR. And I say that because I'm not going to spend time in this video recapping everything that happened at the first TSR, which I will refer to as TSR V1. Trust me, there are a lot of TSRs in this story, and so we need to keep them organized. But I do want to bring up one detail from TSR V1 history. I believe this is the wellspring of everything that comes after. When Gary Gygax and Don Kay founded TSR V1, Gary made the company and not himself the rights holder for D&D. At that time, he thought nothing of it because he saw TSR and himself as 2 halves of the same entity. But it would be this short-sighted decision that later allowed other people at TSR V1 to toss Gary out onto the street and steal control of the D&D product. It's ironic to me that Ernie tried to recreate TSR since it's the company that caused his dad so much pain and anguish in his later years. Anyway, Ernie grew up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. He playtested early D&D and worked in the Dungeon Hobby Shop, which was like a storefront at the original TSR V1 offices. The company thrived in the 80s and then imploded in the 90s and then changed hands, yada yada yada, you all know that story. But now we'll skip ahead several years and introduce the twisty tale of these dual new wave TSRs, because it's like more than 2 actually. Our first major player in the story is a guy named Jason Elliott. A game designer and podcaster, he registered a company in 2011 named TSR. He figured out that the trademark had expired 7 years earlier, so he swooped in and grabbed it. Jason Elliott also managed to recruit Luke and Ernie Gygax and former Dragon magazine editor Tim Kask. Jason, Luke, Ernie, Tim, and a few others became the new TSR V2 company. Luke and Ernie were there to publish Gygax magazine, which was due to arrive in late 2012. Okay, now here is where things get layered. Gary Gygax's widow and second wife Gail sued TSR V2 in 2015 over the trademark. Yes, she sued the company her 2 stepsons had helped launch. And there was a settlement that involved Gail becoming owner of the Gygax name trademark. Luke and Ernie allegedly opted to quit the company instead of signing that settlement. I don't blame them, I wouldn't want to give up ownership of my name either. I wonder if Christmases were awkward. This second TSR rebranded itself as Solarian Games, and it's still around. They published Top Secret, an espionage TTRPG that I appreciated more for its nostalgia than the quality of the actual game. Anyway, Ernie Gygax had nothing to do with the Solarian rebrand or their products, and went off to seek his fortune elsewhere. things were quiet for a few years. But in 2021, Ernie came roaring back and made a much bigger splash this time. Luke Gygax was not involved, and now Ernie joined forces with Justin Lanasa and Steven Deinhardt. Their first product was the science fantasy tabletop game Giantlands by James Ward and Deinhardt. For those counting, this is TSR number 3. So now you're wondering, well, how did they make a third TSR while the second TSR owned the trademark? Again, the trademark lapsed. Jason Elliott of TSR V2 had apparently forgotten to renew the trademark, and so Ernie and his new buddies of TSR V3 stole it out from under him. But things really start to get sticky when this third TSR incarnation announces they're rebooting Star Frontiers. You'll notice so far we haven't mentioned Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro yet. Star Frontiers was made by OG TSR in the 80s and is still owned by WotC. You can still purchase it on DriveThruRPG. I'm not sure what possessed TSR V3 to think they could just do this and get away with it. But no, they announced a new product with IP they didn't own, and that awakened the sleeping giant, which in turn would spell doom for everyone. We don't need to dig into all the details of the court proceedings, but it's safe to say that Wizards and Hasbro won by the end of the story. Star Frontier's new Genesis never made it to market except in leaks, although weirdly, TSR V3 claims they did complete it and somehow sold out a limited print run before they could even announce it. Although to date, no one has been able to unearth any of these quote-unquote purchased early run copies. Strange, right? Stories and information around this are vague and contradictory. Obviously, all these lawsuits and the professional sniping killed TSR3. TSR V3 then split into 2 other companies, TSR Hobbies and Wonderfilled, and yes, TSR Hobbies is TSR number 4. At this point, the web of people and businesses and lawsuits becomes so convoluted and complicated that I'm not going to wade into those waters. Safe to say, it's some of the messiest corporate drama I've ever seen. And I once worked for a small company where multiple people inside were competing to sabotage the business so they could bankrupt it and buy it at a bargain price. Those were wild times. But now we have to talk about the interviews and social media posts. Remember when I said I would neither defend nor besmirch Ernie? Well, this is what happened. In 2021, Ernie made opinionated statements in interviews and posted politically charged things on social media. The things he said and wrote upset a lot of people in the hobby. He became combative with fans online, saying things like, if you don't like Gary Gygax, you shouldn't play D&D. And then not long after, screenshots of the rebooted Star Frontiers rules appeared online. That's when it got ugly. In the 2024 edition of D&D and in other modern TTRPGs, playable species and innate ability have mostly been separated. This is a commonly accepted practice. But as you can see in the screenshot from leaked Star Frontiers playtest material, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Nordic race has exceptional attributes of 13+, whereas the dark-skinned Negro race caps their intelligence at 9. This and other details from the playtest caught a lot of attention online. Big backlash. Also, I should note that while someone from TSR V3 seemingly confirmed they had a data breach around the same time, as far as I can tell, no one at TSR V3 has officially confirmed that the rebooted Star Frontiers playtest content is legit. I could not find receipts. Aside from the contentious online activity, in 2022 and 23, the lawsuits finally caused permanent damage. The second TSR had survived to become Solarian Games and are still publishing. TSR V3 had split into 2 companies, Wonderfilled and TSR Hobbies, which is TSR V4. Wonderfilled is still around and still selling Giantlands, the flagship game of TSR V3. But the TSR Hobbies website now redirects to Wizards of the Coast, so we can easily piece together what happened there. And for the next couple years, things were quiet with Ernie. Health problems had him in and out of the hospital, and he passed away in February of 2025. There are a couple of ironies here to point out. One, just like his father, Ernie became combative on the internet in his elder years. Gary passed away before social media took off, but he was known to have lively debates on early internet forums. Also, that association with two different companies named TSR proved to have painful after effects for both of them. Stranger than fiction, eh? I could close here by rambling some kind of Jerry Springer final thought about legacy and community, but I think the smarter move is to end this video with a quote from Ernie's little brother Luke. He always made time for young gamers and encouraged them. He treated them as gamers who could figure out a way through the challenges, and he didn't pull any punches. Likely the first time these young people had a chance to interact on equal footing with adults, or older teens anyways. Those young folks loved the game and would come and talk and game with Ernie often. He kept that open and friendly demeanor all through his life. I'm GM Jim, thanks for watching.